everyone. Today I have the honor of talking to author Anne Korkeakivi. Did I do good?
You did well.
Okay. And her latest book is called, and I have this up on my Audible, is Shining Sea, because I've been listening to this, and I am so excited to talk to you, Anne. I mean, listening to your book, I was so excited. It just drew me in. It's different than reading it. It's a different kind of feeling than when I'm turning pages. But the guy who did it, his name is David Pinte or Petey or whatever. He was good. He was really good with the different characters. So I'm so happy to be discussing this with you today.
Wonderful. Shining Sea, it's not an easy one to do as an audiobook because Shining Sea, although it only focuses on two of the characters, it focuses on the widow and the youngest son. There really is a pretty big cast of characters, and it travels overseas also, so you start having accents. So you need somebody who's very gifted to read all of those things. So I'm very happy to hear it turned out well. I've heard the same from other people. So.
Yeah, and I actually went back on there because I was almost convinced at one point that it was two people.
There are two people because there's a woman, there's a man who's reading.
Good.
You mean the man? So, yeah. No, if you mean the man, no, it's one man who's doing all those different voices. He's just incredibly good, I've heard. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they chose him, is because he's very skillful at changing voices. And then there also is the woman who does, because, we have rotating points of view. One chapter will be from Barbara, the widow, and one chapter will be from Francis, the youngest son. And they're not exactly rotating 1, 2, 1, 2, but, there's each their individual chapters. And so my understanding is, again, I haven't heard the audiobook, as I told you earlier, because I haven't listened to it. I hear the voices already myself, but since I wrote it. But my understanding is that she did the chapters that are from Barbara's point of view, and he did the chapters that are from Francis's point of view. That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
You'd be able to tell me better.
Yeah, and this story, I hope I get this in the sense that you understand that it picks up speed so quickly. Like, it starts off as this, I'm listening to it, and I'm like, oh, this is really cute. This is such a cute story. And as I get further, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, wow, this is really, really, really good. Like, as it goes on, I have read books in the past that, the beginning is the best part of it. So it's like, as yours goes, it's like, it just kept sucking me in. So by the end, I'm like, okay. I think it's helped that I have 6 children, okay? So Barbara has 5 children. So I really relate to her story of time. I'm 52. You have her aging, and I'm not going to give away anything. We know it's 2 points of view. And
they said, but it goes over 50 years, so.
Yeah, it goes over 50 years. And as my children, my oldest is 30. My youngest is 14. As I'm experiencing, I felt like, I'm going to be Barbara at 70. I just know it. That's going to be, And I have 2 sons that are vets. So that part of the story.
Wow.
Also, I really...
I hope to have to weather some of the things that Barbara has to weather over the years. I hope that doesn't... she has an indomitable spirit, but she does have to face quite a few... she's left a single mother,
Right.
Suddenly in the 60s with 5 kids. That, just to begin with, is pretty difficult. But I'm so happy to hear that, because the opening is very dramatic, and
yes.
I'm really glad that it just sends it off and it doesn't slow down after. Can you see me on the screen?
I can.
Yes,
there it is.
So this is the paperback edition of it, which has a different cover. The one you were showing, this is the hard.
That's right. That's this one. But I love that one. Yes.
And the thing is, you were talking about it picking up speed. It is about this family. There's 6 of them left after the father dies in the opening, which I'm not giving anything away because it's on the marketing material in the back. But there are 6 of them left, and it goes all over the place. It starts in Southern California, Arizona, upstate New York, Woodstock Rock Festival. It goes overseas, 100 pages off the coast of Scotland and in between these islands, comes back to the United States, and goes over 50 years, and it does it all in 276 pages. So it really has to pick up speed. It has to it has to carry along because I've got a lot of stuff to do in a very short.
I couldn't believe it. Okay, so listening to the audiobook, I'm trying to think of how many hours it was. Maybe 8 or 9, I don't know, somewhere in there. And when I went back on Amazon to look at the page count, I was shocked, okay? Because I was like, what? That was only 200. Like, I felt like, I don't know, I was exhausted for her. I was like, oh my God, I can't even tell you how much I related to her as a mom. I've been a single mom. I've raised kids as a single mom. I'm a single mom right now. And I've had, like I told you, I had sons that were vets. They came back, so I get that. But I do get her worrying. But it's something about the way that she grows as she's having, and I'm finding, because now I have grandchildren. I have children having children. And so, I don't know, you wrote that so perfectly for what I've experienced in different ways, but I don't know. If I could put it to words, I would be using her words in some of the things, and I'm not going to give anything away, but the way she grows is what I was really, really wanted to talk to you about, because, you take her as this woman who loses her husband and gets through that. And I can't imagine. But I'd imagine that it would look sort of like how she did it. And then I was writing down the names of the kids because I wanted to have, when I'm taking my notes. And when I got to Sissy, I was like, what is her name? What is Sissy's name? The youngest.
What's her real name?
Yeah.
Desiree. Her real name is Desiree. Which she hates.
Right. But when you're listening to Audible, you can't really flip back pages.
Right.
So I was like, I just had her that everybody calls her Sissy. So I was trying to think of all their names.
Well, I the thing about it is that you have these two primary characters. You have Barbara, who is a survivor. From the very opening, you understand she has this unusual worldview, which is going to carry her through anything. It carried her through World War II, which happened before the book started, and losses and the deprivation then. It carries her, after her husband suddenly dies at the age of 43 in 1962 and leaves her with 5 kids, one of whom isn't even born yet, and she's 9 months pregnant. It carries her through. But it's not really interesting if a character doesn't grow, and people do grow and change. But what I thought was kind of fun to do was that Barbara she's the rock, she's the ballast, and Francis is the lost soul. And he's the one who really has to go. He's devastated by the loss of his father. He's got these problems because he's so beautiful, and people respond to him, they objectify him, and he's completely not equipped to handle it and makes all these terrible choices. And he really goes out seeking for his father, even though his father's died. He's trying to find himself.
Right. So
he's the one who really has the growth. But it wouldn't make sense if she didn't grow too, because if you have all these things happen to you in your life, you've got to change. So I wanted them both to grow, but in a really different way. Like, her development is very different. She stays very solid because she really is Barbara, and her voice stays very much the same. But she opens up. What she learns to accept things. And that's part of her survival, because I think you have to change in order to survive. Part of surviving is being able to change with things. And whereas he really he has to find his voice. Like, she already has her voice.
Right.
He has to find his voice. So they both were changing in very different ways, and that was really interesting to explore on my part, from my side of it, how these two people.
Yeah.
Because when you're in it, they start to feel like people that you know.
Oh, so. Yeah, definitely. And just to give you a hint of why I connected with her so much, I've had 2 husbands, okay? And my first husband was my high school sweetheart, and then I had 3 children with him. Then I had a second husband, had 3 more children, okay? So when she goes on in her life comparing kind of the, well, I've had that, and then I've had that, and then I've had, and that, I don't know, I was just I kept tearing up over it, because to think, when I actually looked to see how many children you have, and you have 2 children, right? You have 2 daughters. Mm-hmm. You wrote down, I don't know how you did it, but you really understand what it's like for a mom to have that many children, because the relationships, how different they are with every child, how, I don't know. I'm just telling you right now, you really nailed that aspect of her relationships with her different children.
Well, the book is in no way autobiographical. None of the characters, none of the actual experiences are autobiographical. But I have to say that my mother was one of 7 children, and my husband is one of 7 children. So I have had an opportunity to see the dynamic, which is very particular in a large family. So I have had a chance to see that up close. Now, none of the characters, I want to say very definitely, none of the characters are any of those characters. Right. But, I did understand that there's a very particular dynamic that happens in a large family.
Yeah, and especially as a mom, like now that I'm a single mom again, I've been single mom at different points in my life, but what I related with her, and then going into a marriage with children, okay, and then you know what I'm saying? Like, so as I'm listening to this, I'm just like, oh my God, this woman knows me. I don't know how, but she does, and because I don't really find many people that have had my life story, and there's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of things where you're in her voice, and I'm like, that's exactly how I feel. Yes, somebody knows how I feel. That's so awesome.
You know what? I feel like this story, even though it's so particular, the things that happen to her are so particular, the things that happen to Frances are so particular to them as individuals, their individual lives. At the same time, I feel like the story is pretty universal because most people have experienced loss, and the book is very much about the way we are affected by historical event and war in specifically conflict, but also there's other historical events that happen, and that's all of us. None of us really escape that. So although their stories are very particular to themselves, and it sounds like to you, I do feel like there's something pretty universal. And I have gotten quite a few letters from people who said, that they saw their story.
Yeah, and that's so cool. And and you know what I kind of related it to as I was listening to it was I felt like it was a modern day Forrest Gump movie.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the way that you went back and forth, and how he experienced
the historical events.
Yeah, historical events, and how Frances. And my one question for you, as I'm listening to this, was why did you? Well, you've sort of answered this, but I mean, out of all the children, because they each have their own very unique. You could write another book with these people. I mean, really, you could. But they each have a unique story. You picked him. You picked Frances out of the other kids to have that other viewpoint, and I was very interested in like what made you, as you're writing it, think, oh, I'm going to go with him. Like I'm going to tell his story.
Well, to back up, Frances was actually my original central character. I was originally telling Frances' story. I was really fascinated by this loss of identity, and I was really interested. Like we discussed earlier, I have 2 daughters, and I was very interested in this question of basically sexual objectification. But I didn't really want to tell it in the story of a girl, because I feel like we're so inured to it. It doesn't. I thought we would pay more attention to it if it was the story of a boy who had that problem, because I think if it were a girl, people would be like, oh, she's a pretty girl, lucky her, that we don't really take it seriously. But when you see what it does to Frances, it makes you see that beauty is not always a gift. Right. It can make it harder for you to find yourself, and I thought that was very interesting to explore with him. I just found his voice just came to me immediately. I loved Barbara, so I had to give her a voice too, but I actually, in an original draft, I actually had one more point of view. I had Sissy's point of view, but it got too complicated and I took it out. There were other characters that I felt as close to and fascinated by, etc., like Patty Ann, who is just something. But my interest in Patty Ann was very much about her relationship with Barbara. So I wasn't really interested in Patty Ann independent of Barbara to a certain degree. I was more interested, so I felt like her story in a way was better told through Barbara and her relationship with her. So I didn't really need to do that. And I mean, I don't want to go to, because I'd give some things away, but there's some other.
It's like we're skirting around just because I don't
do. So the only other character then that was left was Sissy, and I loved Sissy, and when I had to cut out her point of view, when I realized there was too much going on, I put it in a drawer and I said, I'm going to write a novel about Sissy, because
Okay,
Maybe
if
I
you
will.
need people to agree with you on this, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think you could do Patty Ann, you could do Sissy. You know, there's so many points. But okay, so another thing that I really loved what you did, and it is amazing that you did it in this many pages too, is that the interactions between the siblings. Because now as a mom, I can, you know, and my children are getting older, I can step back and I can see the different interactions. My children go 2 boys, 2 girls, 2 boys. So the girls are in the middle, okay? And to see who's close with who, or like going through, if somebody's going through something, they kind of all gather around, but then to see the ones that they're kind of closer with, I don't know. It was really cool the way you did that, the way you had them talk about them, the way you had, you know, like I can step back and be like, oh, okay. It's just interesting to me as a mom, just like it was to Barbara, and she got to witness what was happening with her children, and kind of step back and then not know when to go in, and you know, it's always a given. You know, you always have to decide, when am I going to interfere, or you know. My children told me, my 5th child told me the other day, I said something stupid or silly or something, and he was like, I'm like, who are you texting that to? He's like, oh, Mom, we have a group message called Stupid Things You Say. And I'm like, oh, that's... I'm glad they relate over that. But anyway, that's what I kind of related for her, because she was kind of stepping back. She was watching it. She was close to, you know, her relationship, and then it's the kids' relationship too. And I just wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed that part of the book.
Thank you. You know, Barbara has very different, her kids each have a different personality. So she has a different relationship with each of them.
Right.
She loves all of them.
Right.
There's, you know, she's very funny, Barbara is. And there's one child who's very funny. And
right.
So they have a good time together. And, you know, there's one child that's more vulnerable, and she doesn't really know, well, that's Frances, really.
Right.
She doesn't really, he's the child that, he's so different from her, from how she is, that she doesn't, it's the hardest one for her to, but it doesn't mean she doesn't love him, it's just that she doesn't quite know how to strike that equilibrium. This is, you know, they have their own personalities, and you know, so it's inevitable. She and Patty Ann, they both have really strong personalities, so they're like at loggerheads, but at the same time they're like this, you know, they're insufferable. So and I thought that was really fascinating, that their relationship and the way that works, the way that they fight constantly and yet love each other so. They're just so entwined. I found that very moving to write about and to just develop.
Yeah, and you know, as also having daughters and then being a daughter, like I could relate on both sides of that, you know, because I had a relationship with my mom, you know, and then it's like, and then doing it with your daughters, you're like, oh, I'm sounding like my mom, and you know, so.
When I write, I start off my characters, and they just don't resemble me or my family or my life, because by the time I start writing the book, they've taken on lives of their own. They're complete dependent individuals. So I think that if you, you know, if you're just a watchful person, which I always have been, you start to see things about people and you gather them up and you start to have a certain understanding of humanity. And that's a big part of why I write, is because I'm interested in humanity and I'm expressing what I've seen, you know. So it's not necessarily reflective of my own experiences, but even when a character may not have anything to do with somebody you know, there may be some interaction that you've seen happen. It could be in an airport interaction that you've seen between two people, you know, a mother and a daughter, and it just strikes you, it just sticks with you. So I was really thinking about all those things as I was creating these people and putting them.
Well, I'm just so glad that I can be able to tell you how amazing that book was, because I love telling authors that. But this is your second novel. I wanted to talk a little bit about your first novel, which, oh yeah, you have it? Yes. Which I have not read, but now I'm definitely reading, so. Because I like to read the most current. But your ratings on that, the reviews on that book is just amazing. And I can see why.
Yeah. Well, An Unexpected Guest is my first novel, is very different. I mean, I think I've been told that I have a very distinctive voice, so you would be able to know I was the author right away.
Right.
But it's very different because it actually takes place all in one day. So instead of taking place over 50 years, it takes place it's like the opposite. It's very compact, and it also has a lot of momentum. It's the story of an American woman who's married to a high-ranking British diplomat and living in Paris. And she has a secret from her youth. And it's not like a funny dance on the table drunk. It's a really serious secret that would send her to prison, or would have sent her to prison. Very serious. She has a secret that only one person has ever known about, and that person has passed away, or she's heard reports that person has passed away. So she thinks it's safe. But on this one particular day that's crucial in her husband's career, and it's not coincidental that it's on this day, that past secret starts to come out, and it comes out like Hydra, like one head here, one head here, one head here. And she's, it's the same day as he has been asked to put on a very last minute dinner for the minister in the British government who's responsible for giving ambassadorships. And he's very high ranking, but he's never been an ambassador. So this is his chance to get an ambassadorship. So she's trying to put together this dinner for him at the same time as like trying to handle all of the stuff that's coming from her past. And it's all happening one day.
Wow.
So,
that is,
and it's Paris. So.
I will definitely be reading that. I love the way you write. And this book, like you said, when it comes from two different perspectives, I'm just interested, do you do like extensive outlining for that so you know where you are in keeping the stories, when to put, which character that you want next, like as you're doing it?
Well, I should first just give a brief run-up of what Shining Sea is about. So Shining Sea is about what happens to a family in Southern California after the father, who is a former World War II veteran and a POW in the Pacific, suddenly dies at the age of 43 in 1962 from heart condition that he developed while he was in horrendous circumstances in the Pacific. But he's been okay, and then one day it gets to him, and that happens. I'm not giving anything away. That happens in the first chapter. You see him dying, and that's it. So he leaves behind Barbara, who is 9 months pregnant, and 4 children who are already born.
Right.
So, he leaves behind 5 children, and it follows them through the counterculture of the 60s, through the Vietnam War in the 70s, and so forth up into the present day, as they kind of come together and come apart as a family, weathering all of these different things that happen to them through how these historical events, affect them. Right. So, So writing it was kind of a trick, like you said, because I was going over a lot of time, and with these 6 characters. Now there are only 2 that you focus on, but still I needed to get everything right.
Right.
It all came to me very clearly before I started. I usually have a pretty good picture of what I'm doing before I start writing, so it all came to me pretty clearly. But I don't usually make notes of that sort. What I do is I create a character sheet, so I know the character very well. I say what they look like, and of all the characters, what they look like, when they were born, where they were born, any basic, like if the FBI was looking at you, I'd look at it. So I have that on file. And then for this particular case, I made charts on the walls that had every single chapter and what age every single character was. Because, otherwise it would have driven me crazy trying to remember, when it's split into 4 different books, or 4 different sections. Each one of those is split into chapters. Well, the first section is just one chapter when the father's dying, and then the third, maybe there are 5. Actually, there are 5 books. There are 5.
Okay.
Sorry. So the middle one.
I remember the last part was then
fun.
Right.
It's just one, but it's the really long one where Francis is at sea most of the time in this little Irish fishing boat called a currach, because he's really lost at sea. He's lost at sea figuratively and literally.
Right.
And then the last chapter, which is just one, but the rest of them they have other chapters. So people are aging, and for me to remember at any given time, that was just too much. I created charts on the wall. That's the only charts I made.
Yeah, and to find out where everyone is too. Because they start spreading out, and that's how.
Well, that was an FBI cost.
Yeah, like at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, she had to pull it all. The way you pulled it all together. The ending is fabulous. I mean, I have to tell you, like I said, I didn't even want it to end, but it was such an amazing ending. I was so glad that it wrapped up the way it did, and then I just breathed a sigh of like, I just. But I'm so happy that we got to talk about this. And what else? Like, so you maybe do another book about them, maybe. But is there anything else?
Now, but I have it saved in case I want to come back to it. I did have a whole story for her, so I could come back to it.
Awesome.
But it's not what I'm working on right now.
Can you like give us a little like taste of what you're working on?
I think what I'll say about it is that it's different again.
Yeah.
It's still my voice, but I'm trying out, I don't want to do the same novel 3 times, or twice.
Right.
But other than that, I think I'm not quite ready. I think it's better to, I'm still in a very formative stage of putting it all together. So.
What is your favorite part? Like when you're thinking about what your next novel is, like, is it the more fun for you to think about like what you're going to do or the actual writing of it? Like I know for me, like I love the process of like thinking about what I'm going to do,
For me, it's when you hit the sweet spot when you're writing it. The world. It's just everything else disappears and you're in this story with these people and they're doing their thing, and it's almost like you're just watching it. When you get into the heart of it, you're just, watching what they're doing, and it's just the most wonderful thing.
Do you know how it's gonna? Do you know what's gonna happen with every character, or when you get into it, do sometimes you're like, oh no, I see it going? Like, do you ever? Well, especially with this book, I mean.
No. I 100% know what's going to happen, and then it usually changes. It's life,
Right.
Life.
Right. Well, I can't wait to see what you have next, and I'm going to read Unexpected Guest. And everybody, I mean, Shining Sea, please read this book. You will not be sorry. Listen to it. Even the guide, listen to the book if you don't have time to read it. But I will have all of your links so that people can find you on social media and find your books on Amazon. And thank you so much, Anne. I have a daughter named Annie. So do you go by Annie at all?
Well, I have a demarcation in my life, because until I was 21, everybody called me Annie. Everybody called me Annie. And then when I went out, maybe I was 22, I went out into the professional world, and I had my first byline. I think my first byline actually was under Annie, but my second one went under Anne. And from then on, I was Anne. So anybody who knows me from before the age of 22 calls me Annie, and everybody afterwards, which is only a couple of people because I'm like 22, no, I'm just kidding. But, everybody afterwards calls me Anne, and my husband is from Finland.
Right.
And in Finland, you pronounce every letter. So my name, Anne, is Anne. So when he met me with, he very shortly after he met me, met one of my sisters. And she was calling me Annie. And he heard it as like Anne. Like, so right. He always, he and his family, who I met later when when I was in my 20s, but over 22, they call me Annie too. So.
I love that. I know I named my daughter Angelica, but I knew that I was going to call her Annie. I just gave her that so that eventually if she got tired of Annie, and now she's 22, and I hear more of her friends calling her Angelica, and I'm like, oh, so she is getting, that she wants it to be her other name, so it's kind of cool. But anyway, thank you, Anne. You have a great day, and thank you for your time, and we will be talking soon.
It was a real pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.